The auditorium lights dimmed into a muted gold, casting long shadows across row after row of empty seats. Adams stood backstage, half hidden behind the heavy velvet curtain, staring at those vacant chairs as if they were a silent jury. Dozens of families filled the space, cheering, clapping, taking pictures, but the middle section right in front of the stage, the one reserved for him, remained bare. 6 chairs, 6 names, 6 invitations. No one came. The mic crackled. Next, receiving honors in Business Systems Innovation, Adams O'Male. His name echoed through the building with the kind of pride he had always wished his family would feel for him. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. But the applause was a blanket thrown over a wound, warm for a moment, then meaningless. He walked forward. His black commencement gown swayed slightly, the gold stole shimmering under the lights. He shook hands with the dean, smiled for the camera, and turned toward the crowd. Then he saw her, the one face he never wanted to see today. His older sister, Nina, not in the reserved seats, not even pretending to clap. She stood leaning against the back wall, arms folded, smirking like his achievement was a joke only she understood. When his eyes met hers, she lifted her chin slightly and mouthed something he'd heard his entire childhood. "You'll never have anything." Her lips moved slowly, deliberately, like she wanted those words carved into him forever. Adams blinked, the lights burning white circles into his vision. He forced a smile, pretending he didn't see her, pretending she had no power left. But she did. She always had. Even now, as he walked off stage to no waiting family, no celebratory hugs, no congratulations, just an empty aisle. A knife twisted inside him. He had fought his way through college. He had built himself from scraps, working 2 jobs, sleeping 4 hours, eating once a day when times were bad. Yet somehow, her voice still lived in him like a parasite. "You'll never have anything, Adams. You'll always be behind me. You should be grateful I let you live in my world." Her world. That was the problem. He had spent most of his life trying to live in it. But not anymore. Instant time lapse. Years compressed into a single moment. 7 years later, on a crisp Thursday morning, Adams stood on the 28th floor of a glass tower overlooking the city. His office stretched wide, modern, minimal, and quiet in a way he had earned. Sunlight poured in through floor-to-ceiling windows, touching polished steel fixtures and the deep walnut desk custom-built for him. He was no longer the boy staring at empty chairs. He was the CEO of Forge Tech Solutions, one of the fastest-growing logistics automation companies in the region. His tech had revolutionized how small manufacturers shipped products, slashing costs and boosting efficiency. His revenue, $42 million annually and climbing. His staff, 93 employees. His presence in the industry, undeniable. And yet, he hadn't spoken to his sister in 7 years. Not once. He didn't attend Christmas, didn't go home after graduation, didn't show up for reunions. In fact, everyone had to reach him through email because the Adams who used to beg for their attention no longer existed. People came to him now. Everyone came to him, even the ones who once said he would be nothing. Backstory, the weight he carried. Growing up, Adams was the quiet middle child, neither the golden firstborn nor the doted-on youngest. His sister Nina, older by 6 years, had been the hurricane everyone revolved around. Brilliant, manipulative, socially magnetic, academically gifted. Their parents worshipped her. Nina got the birthday parties, the Christmas gifts, the funding for private school, the attention, the praise, the love. Adams got silence. When he excelled in science fairs, there were no cheers. When he broke school records, there was no recognition. When he won scholarships, there were no celebrations. He learned early that his accomplishments were invisible unless Nina didn't have any of her own that week. She ruled the house with a smug confidence, feeding on approval. It didn't matter whether she was right or wrong. She always won. And somehow, she made Adams the villain of her world. "You slow the family down. You're not ambitious enough. You're too soft. You think too small. You'll never have anything." Her words weren't just insults. They were expectations spoken as prophecy. Their parents reinforced it, not always with cruelty, but with quiet neglect. Adams is simple. Not like Nina. He doesn't need much. He learned to shrink himself so they wouldn't notice how badly he needed encouragement. But the truth was, he had ambition. He had talent. He had a mind sharp enough to solve problems people twice his age struggled with. What he didn't have was belief. Not until graduation day, when he saw Nina at the back of that auditorium, smirking, amused, satisfied. That was the moment he snapped, not out of anger, but out of awareness. No one was coming to save him. He would build his life alone, brick by brick. And when he was done, they wouldn't even recognize the man he became. Graduation betrayal, the emotional pivot. After the commencement ceremony ended, Adams walked out into the sunlight with his diploma folder clutched tightly in his hand. Students were celebrating with their families, laughing, crying, taking pictures, planning dinners. He walked alone. He felt the ache of abandonment, but also the sharp rise of determination. Then she appeared. Nina stepped out from behind a pillar like a villain in a drama. She was dressed elegantly, makeup perfect, jewelry expensive. She always dressed like she belonged on a magazine cover, even when she didn't have the money for it. "Well," she said, crossing her arms. "You did it. Miracles still happen, I guess." Adams swallowed tightly. "You didn't sit in your seat." "Why would I?" She scoffed. "It was boring. Besides this," she gestured at the campus, "isn't real success. It's just school. Anyone can graduate if they try long enough." "Not everyone," he said quietly. Nina smirked. "Maybe not you. But hey, congratulations. Now you get to enter the real world and realize just how far behind you actually are." He stared at her. She stared back, unblinking. Then she leaned closer and whispered, with a small, cruel smile, "You'll never have anything, Adams. People like me lead. People like you follow. Or they get used." She patted his shoulder. "Luckily, I'm here to remind you of that." And she walked away. That moment didn't break him. It built him. He would remember her words every time he was tired, broke, hungry, exhausted, discouraged. He would remember her voice every time a door closed, every time an investor rejected him, every time the world said no. But he didn't know then that soon it would be Nina, powerful, admired Nina, who needed him. Not emotionally, not spiritually, but for survival. Rise plus silence. How Adams built his empire. He didn't rise quickly. He didn't rise easily. His climb was a bloody, exhausting, teeth-gritted war. He spent the first 2 years working as an intern during the day and studying code frameworks at night. He slept on a mattress on the floor. He lived on noodles and discount sandwiches. He fixed broken laptops for cash. He built tiny apps no one downloaded. But he didn't stop. Every insult Nina ever threw at him was fuel. Every door closed in his face was a spark. Then came the idea that changed everything. A small machining company had lost thousands of dollars because of poor inventory tracking. Adams created a simple automation tool to solve the problem. When it worked, he realized companies were bleeding money because they lacked smart, affordable logistics automation. So he built something better. A software system that small factories could afford, but powerful enough to perform like the ones used by billion-dollar corporations. He launched Forge Tech in a cramped co-working space with mismatched chairs and no heating. He hired 2 interns he could barely pay. He survived on caffeine and adrenaline. He made mistake after mistake, but refused to stop. Then his system landed its first manufacturing client. Then 5 more. Then 12. Then 30. Industries noticed. Investors noticed. And before long, everyone who ever doubted him noticed. But he never bragged, never posted his success online, never showed up at family gatherings. He stayed quiet. His silence was louder than any boast. While he built his empire, his family built a narrative. Adams is distant. He thinks he's better than us. He abandoned us after graduation, but they hadn't abandoned him because they were never there to begin with. Family reappears, but only to use him. On a cold Tuesday morning, Adams' assistant, Jordan, walked into the office holding an envelope. "It was dropped off at the lobby for you. No sender name." Adams took it silently. His pulse slowed the moment he saw the handwriting on the envelope. Small, Elegant. Familiar. He opened it. Inside was a wedding invitation. Nina O'Male and Cole Mensa. Request the honor of your presence. Adam's stomach tightened. She hadn't spoken to him in 7 years. But she wanted him there. He flipped the card over. A handwritten note. I know we've had our differences, but family is family. I want you to be part of my big day. Also, Cole is expanding his business, and he said you two might have opportunities to collaborate. Bring your business card. Nina. There it was. The truth. Now we miss you. Now I'm sorry. Now let's reconnect. But come to my wedding so we can ask for something. Adams folded the invitation and set it aside. He wasn't surprised. Not even disappointed. Just tired. Later that week, his mother called for the first time in years. Adams, darling. It's been so long. How are you? He could hear the rehearsed sweetness in her voice. The kind that only appeared when she wanted something. We hope you'll come to Nina's ceremony. It wouldn't be right without you. He wanted to ask, where were you at my ceremony? Where were you when I graduated to empty seats? Where were you when I needed encouragement? But he swallowed it. He wasn't that desperate boy anymore. I'll think about it, he said coolly. No one liked that answer. An hour later, his father called. Then his uncle. Then his mother again. Suddenly everyone remembered he existed. Conflict scene, the family dinner that wasn't. A week before the wedding, his mother insisted he attend a simple family dinner. Just a small gathering. Just food. Just bonding. Adams wasn't naive. He arrived dressed in a dark, tailored suit, stepping out of a sleek sedan his company provided. When he walked into the restaurant's private room, conversations halted. His parents stared at him with startled awe. They weren't used to seeing him look like a man who owned an empire. Nina sat at the head of the table, her fiancé beside her, and her smile grew sharp and triumphant the moment she saw him. Everyone, she said loudly, Adams is here. He took his seat silently. For 10 minutes, they pretended to catch up. Then the trap sprung. So, Nina began, twirling her wine glass. We're actually glad you came. Cole, and I have a business proposal for you. There it was. Not family. Not love. Not reconnection. A business meeting. Disguised as dinner. Cole cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. We're opening a luxury event center. Prime location. But we need access to the adjacent warehouse compound to expand. The landlord has been difficult to reach. We heard you might be able to help. Adams opened the folder. Blueprints. Budget plans. Projections. Then at the last page, a note. Landlord. Forge Tech Property Holdings. He paused, slowly closed the folder, and looked up. Nina's voice softened into the false sweetness he had grown up with. Adams, little brother, we know you have connections. This is important to us. Can you make it happen? Adams leaned back, calm as stone, because they didn't know. They had no idea. They were asking him for access to a property he owned. Silence settled over the table thicker than the linen that covered it. The kind of silence that carried weight, like the moment before a storm breaks open the sky. Adams folded his hands calmly on the table, his expression unreadable. The same family who once spoke over him, dismissed him, underestimated him, now sat waiting for him to speak. For the first time in his life, all their attention was on him. He didn't rush. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He let them feel the pause. Across from him, Nina's fiancé, Cole, cleared his throat again, mistaking Adam's silence for confusion. We know the landlord can be difficult, but if you can help us negotiate, we're prepared to offer you a generous consulting fee. Nina nodded eagerly, brushing her manicured hair behind her ear. Exactly. You scratch our back, we scratch yours. It's a win-win. Her voice dripped with coaxing sweetness, the same syrupy tone she used to manipulate teachers, friends, and anyone foolish enough to fall for her charm. But charm had never worked on Adams. Not then. Not now. His father leaned forward, forcing a stiff smile. Son, this is a chance to help your sister. Family should support family, right? The hypocrisy was so rich, it almost made Adams laugh. Family should support family? Since when? He remembered years of missed birthdays, ignored calls, and unspoken betrayals. He remembered walking alone across the graduation stage. He remembered the 6 empty seats. His mother chimed in next, her voice soft and practiced. Adams, dear, You're in business now. Surely you understand opportunities. Oh, he understood them perfectly, especially the ones he created on his own. He took a slow breath, then spoke. What exactly do you want from me? As if rehearsed, Nina clasped her hands together dramatically. We want you, she paused as if savoring the authority, to arrange a meeting with the owner of the warehouse. That's all. She said it like the landlord was some faceless titan, some unreachable power figure stored away in distant boardrooms. Adams nodded once. Why that particular property? Cole jumped in eager. Location. Perfect for our expansion. It has direct access to the rear street. Our architect said that with the adjoining lot, our project value would quadruple. So, Adams asked slowly, you need the owner to sell? Nina shook her head. Not sell. Lease. Long-term. Preferably 30 years. Dad said you know the right people. His father lifted his glass with a proud smile. My son is very connected, you know. Connected. What an interesting word from a man who once told him, you're not built like your sister. Some people are just ordinary, Adams. He let the amusement flicker behind his eyes, but gave no expression. Why not reach out to him directly? Adams asked. Cole sighed as if insulted by the question. We tried. His assistant never responds. The company is too corporate. Adams held back a smile. They had emailed Forge Tech Property Holdings. He knew. He saw the emails himself. Every request Nina and Cole sent automatically rerouted to his desk because he was the sole owner of the entire property network. He had ignored every message. Not out of cruelty. He simply didn't owe them his time. But now they were in front of him, asking, needing, and still, they didn't know who they were speaking to. The irony was delicious. The conversation turns. So, Nina pressed, can you help us or not? Of course he can, his mother added, her voice rising. Adams isn't ungrateful. Ungrateful? The word stung in a way only family could manage. Ungrateful for the love he never received. Ungrateful for the silence they gifted him. Ungrateful for the years he carried himself without 1 ounce of support from any of them. But Adams stayed composed, controlled, deliberate. I can talk to him, he said finally. Relief washed over the table. His mother smiled. His father exhaled in triumph. Cole raised his glass. Only Nina narrowed her eyes. What's the catch? She asked. Adams met her gaze head-on. No catch. She didn't believe him because she would have added a catch. Still, she smiled. A predatory kind of smile. Then we appreciate it. Truly. She didn't say thank you. She didn't say I'm sorry for the past. She didn't even say you look good, or you've changed, or we're proud of you. Because Nina's gratitude was always conditional. And tonight, she believed she had the upper hand. If only she knew how small her world really was. The turning tide begins. When the dinner ended, the family filtered out one by one, offering superficial hugs and hollow warmth that had collected dust over 7 years. Adams shook Cole's hand and gave Nina a polite nod. She leaned in close. Don't mess this up, she whispered. A familiar line. A familiar wound. Except this time, he wasn't the boy being scolded by an older sister. He was a man who owned the ground she needed. He walked out of the restaurant, the evening breeze cool against his face. Jordan, his assistant, stood by the waiting sedan. How'd it go? Jordan asked. Adams slipped in the back seat, closing the door softly behind him. They want the warehouse. Jordan's brows lifted. The one they've been emailing about. Yes. And they still don't know you're the owner? Adams looked out the window at the glowing city. No. They think I have connections. Jordan laughed under his breath. Well, technically you do. Adams didn't smile. His mind was far away, back at the empty graduation seats, back in childhood, back in all the moments he had been taught to expect nothing. Call the property lawyers, he said finally. We'll need to make sure everything is in place. Jordan hesitated. In place for what? Adams leaned his head back slowly. For what happens next? The reveal begins to construct itself. The week passed quickly. The wedding loomed. The pressure on Nina and Cole escalated as their business timeline grew tighter. Every day, they likely checked their inboxes, hoping for a response from the owner. Every day, none came. Until one morning, they got a letter. A formal invitation. On embossed stationery. with a gold seal crest. Forge Tech Property Holdings. Request your presence at a private meeting regarding lease negotiations. Location, 43 Grantham Street, the warehouse compound. Date, Friday, 8 a.m. Nina screamed in excitement loud enough that her neighbors probably heard her. She called her parents. They called Adams. He ignored their calls. He had nothing left to explain. He would see her Friday. The warehouse meeting, tension on concrete floors. The warehouse compound wasn't what most people imagine when they heard industrial property. It had been renovated into a sleek, modern facility. Reflective glass walls, steel fixtures, security systems, manicured landscaping. Everything about it said serious money. Nina arrived early in an emerald pantsuit that glimmered when she moved. Cole wore a tailored charcoal suit and carried a portfolio under his arm. They looked like a power couple, but power only mattered when it was real. A black SUV pulled in moments later. Adam stepped out. Nina waved him over dramatically. There you are. We've been waiting. But Adams didn't walk to her. He walked to the front entrance, where a man in a black suit opened the door for him and nodded respectfully. Nina paused, confused. Cole frowned. Wait, is he expected? She looked at him with a sudden crease between her brows. Why would he be expected? He's just here to introduce us to the landlord. But the security guard held the door open and said, Good morning, Mr. O'Male. Your guests have arrived. Nina froze. Cole blinked rapidly. Adams didn't stop walking. He let the words land. He let the truth sink in. Mr. O'Male. He owned this place. He owned the entire compound. He owned everything they thought was out of reach. And suddenly, everything they planned, everything they needed, everything they dreamed depended on him. Inside the meeting room. The conference room was sleek, minimalist, timeless. Polished concrete floors. Matte black walls accented with warm walnut. Recessed lighting. A panoramic window overlooked the compound grounds. 3 lawyers sat at the table, along with Forge Tech's head of property operations. When Adams walked in, everyone stood. Good morning, sir, they said. Sir. Nina and Cole looked like they'd been punched. Adams took his seat at the head of the table. The head of property operations turned to Nina and Cole. Please sit. They obeyed in stunned silence. Cole forced a smile. So, you're the owner? Adams didn't answer. It wasn't a question worth answering. His silence was answer enough. Nina slowly leaned back in her chair, her face drained of color. Her vision of control evaporated. She wasn't the princess in this room. She was a guest. A desperate one. The documents come out. One lawyer slid a folder to Adams. These are the terms you requested for review. Cole perked up. Terms? Great. So we can move forward. No, Adams said calmly, finally speaking. You can listen. Cole deflated. Nina swallowed hard. Adams opened the folder without looking at them. The compound is not available for lease, he said slowly. Their faces fell. But, he continued, I'm open to negotiation. Nina sat forward eagerly. Of course. Anything. Just tell us what you need. He lifted his eyes to hers. The same eyes that watched her smirk at his empty seats 7 years ago. The same eyes that had seen her lean in and say, You'll never have anything. First, Adams said, there will be no 30-year lease. Cole jumped in. Then what? No 20-year lease. No 10-year lease. Then what are you offering? Nina demanded, her voice rising slightly in panic. A 1-year renewable term, Adams said. They both gaped. That's impossible to build with, Cole protested. Investors won't approve a project with that timeline. That's not my concern, Adams replied. Nina's face flushed red. This is ridiculous. We came here in good faith. Adams looked at her, finally letting the years of silence take shape. You came here assuming I'd be desperate to impress you, he said, or that I still needed you. Nina blinked, stunned by the directness. But I don't, he added quietly. The room went still. The power shifted so dramatically it almost had a sound. The breaking point. Nina slammed her hand lightly on the table. You're doing this on purpose. Yes, Adams said calmly. I am. His honesty stunned even the lawyers. He didn't hide it, didn't soften it, didn't pretend. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. 7 years ago, I walked across a graduation stage. You stood at the back of the room and told me I'd never have anything. Nina's eyes widened as the memory slammed back into her. You said I would always be behind you, that people like you lead and people like me follow. His voice didn't crack. It didn't rise. It was steady, measured, inevitable. But here we are, he said, and you're sitting in a building I own, asking for something you need that I don't. Cole looked between them, horrified. Nina's throat moved. Adams, I didn't mean. Yes, he said softly. You did. She fell silent. He continued. I built myself from nothing. Without your help. Without anyone's help. And now you want access to what I created only because it benefits you. Nina lowered her gaze, unable to hold his eyes. He closed the folder. Negotiations are over for today. But Cole began. Over, Adams repeated. A guard opened the door. Nina stood slowly, her hands shaking. Cole rose beside her. Mr. O'Male, sir, surely we can. This is business, Adams said, standing. Not family. Nina's eyes glistened. For the first time, perhaps in her entire life, she looked small. Not because Adams belittled her, but because she realized she couldn't belittle him anymore. The walkout. Nina stopped at the door, turning back toward him. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Revenge. Adams paused. No, he said. Her eyes softened in relief. Then he added, closure. Nina's face crumbled, and Adams walked away from her. For the first real time in his life. Adams walked out of the conference room, the polished concrete echoing beneath his shoes. Outside, the air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain that had passed hours earlier. He felt no triumph, no gloating, only calm, the kind that comes from knowing you've reclaimed control of a life that was always yours to begin with. Inside, Nina and Cole sat in stunned silence, their egos bruised and pride shattered. This wasn't humiliation, it was clarity. The wedding. The day of Nina's wedding arrived with a golden sunrise casting soft light across the manicured gardens of the venue. Guests mingled, photographers clicked, and waiters glided gracefully with champagne flutes. Adams arrived, not because he cared about the ceremony, but because he wanted to witness something. He entered quietly, blending in with the crowd. Nina's smile was wide and radiant as she walked down the aisle, her confidence restored in front of everyone. But as she approached the altar, her hand on Cole's arm, Adams noticed something. The security coordinator, subtly gesturing to the front row, her investors, her family, all looking toward him with curiosity. He didn't sit. He didn't participate. He simply watched. The sweet revenge moves. Later, as the reception buzzed with champagne and congratulations, Nina approached him cautiously, clutching her bouquet like a shield. Adams, about the warehouse, she began. He raised a hand politely. I told you negotiations were over, he said calmly. You can proceed, but only under terms I've already decided. Her eyes widened. Terms? Cole asked nervously, scanning the room. Yes, Adams said, letting the words sink in. A 1-year lease, no automatic renewal, full insurance and maintenance responsibility on you. If any delay occurs, the lease is void. You may use the property, but the ownership, the control, and the profits stay mine. Nina's face went pale. This, he continued, is business, not family. She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but nothing came out. He had removed every lever she thought she had over him, every assumed advantage. And the most painful part? It didn't matter, because Adams wasn't vindictive. He wasn't angry. He was precise. She realized it. She had always underestimated him. And for the first time, she felt the weight of her own arrogance. The emotional pivot. Adams didn't speak to her again that day. Instead, he drifted through the crowd, nodding politely to a few colleagues who approached him to offer congratulations on ForgeTech's latest acquisition, a multi-million-dollar industrial park that cemented his status in the city. He found a quiet balcony overlooking the gardens. The sunset stretched in ribbons of gold and lavender across the sky. The city beyond twinkled faintly in the distance. He sipped his drink and let himself breathe. All the years of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed, they were behind him now. Nina and Cole? Their world had changed because of him. Every decision they had made, every plan they had hoped to implement, now hinged on the one person they had mocked for being nothing. And it was the sweetest, quietest revenge. The final reflection. Later that night, back in his penthouse, Adam set his briefcase carefully on the kitchen counter. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the marble, staring at the city lights below. He thought of every empty seat, every overlooked achievement, every moment he had been ignored or dismissed. He smiled softly, because he had learned something fundamental. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be cruel. True power is quiet. It's earned. It's precise. And most importantly, it's irreversible. He traced the edge of his portfolio, remembering the nights he had sewn it by hand, the sleepless hours working toward something no one else believed he could achieve. And now, it wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to himself that he never needed them to begin with. Nina had changed. Cole had changed. Their entire world depended on him. And he had gained freedom, respect, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had built it all with his own hands. The city hummed beneath him, lights flickering like tiny stars, endless and unstoppable. Adams poured the rest of his water into the sink and looked back at his black portfolio. It was more than documents. It was history. It was power. It was proof that the boy who once stood in empty seats had become a man who held everything they had ever underestimated in his hands. He turned off the lights, and for the first time in years, Adams slept knowing he had won. Not through anger, not through spite, but with patience, intelligence, and unwavering self-belief. The sweet revenge wasn't in humiliation. It was in their realization that the world they tried to control had already passed them by. The end, white heavy checkmark.